let's face it, Prince Andrew has not exactly played a blinder for quite some time. What he did say when he was interviewed by Emily Maitlis last year was that he would do everything he could to cooperate with the FBI and with the American authorities in their investigation into Jeffrey Epstein and his paedophile tendencies. However, up to now, he's done nothing but stop them from helping to gain any more information from him because he hasn't talked to them. Let's talk to Paul Connew, columnist for the New European, former Fleet Street editor, of course. Paul, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike. Yes,
So,
not only that, but of course the Manhattan U.S. Attorney Jeffrey Berman has not only repeated his claim that Prince Andrew is refusing to cooperate, but he said he's completely shut the door on cooperation. So I think this one is not going to go away.
it really isn't. And the last time I think we spoke about this, I said that Prince Andrew had been quoted as saying to Emily Maitlis that if his legal team said it was a good idea to talk to the authorities in America, he would do so. So we can only conclude that his legal team have told him not to.
Well, he used the word appropriate was the word he used in that interview. Well, he's obviously decided that he has an interesting definition of appropriate, I think, in most people's books. And I'm told that he's actually engaged two expert extradition lawyers in the last couple of weeks, which is quite interesting. Possibly not unconnected to the fact that flight logs show that in February 1999 he flew on Epstein's private plane to the private U.S. Virgin Islands estate that Epstein owned, and which, according to a lawsuit filed by the territory's U.S. Attorney General, they say they have evidence that Epstein held captive underage girls there as recently as 2018. So, I think Prince Andrew's, whatever he did or didn't do personally, Prince Andrew's judgments and his friends would be an exceptionally embarrassing, should we say, moment in his life standing in a courtroom.
Yes.
But the trouble is that we all know Prince Andrew loves to freeload around the world, including America. Well, I think at the moment he'd be very foolish to set foot on U.S. soil anywhere. Yeah,
well, this is the problem for him, and he's now kind of in a sort of busted flush status, isn't he, really, in the royal family, because he was at an event, I think, just the other day, where he wasn't allowed to represent the Queen, even though I think he was the only member of the royal family there who would normally otherwise be doing that. And so he's a bit of a liability, really, isn't he?
That was a private service for one of the Queen's long-standing aides or courtiers, but of course it was an event that was held privately. It wasn't open to the media, so he wasn't on display in front of any cameras. And of course he was significantly missing, of course, from yesterday's rather interesting and tense Commonwealth Day service.
It was interesting. I was going to ask you about that because obviously people are taking all kinds of views of the way that William and Kate interacted with Harry and Meghan. But there's clearly something not quite right there, isn't there?
I think a touch of frost would be a sort of only David Jason was missing, really.
Yeah, right.
But no, there was clearly tension there. There was, okay, you could argue that they weren't going to shake hands because of coronavirus, but there wasn't even a fist bump. There was actually a sort of slightly sort of cool mutual exchange of nods, and then, of course, Prince Harry rather snubbed in the lineup afterwards Boris Johnson too. So,
well, there are people saying that, but I've actually seen there are two versions, bizarrely, of the video. One which shows
you're right, there are.
One which shows him not talking to Boris, and the other one shows him actually talking to Boris. So I think that's probably not quite right to say that.
Well, I think what seemed to happen was that Prince Harry seemed to prefer to talk to Baroness Scotland, which is a controversial figure in her own right. But in fact, rather than Boris.
I mean, he certainly didn't spend much time. He didn't spend much time with Boris, did he?
No, Boris seemed to sort of more talk to him, and Andrew and Harry rather said something back. But it was a stub in the sense that you might have thought that he would stop and speak to the Prime Minister rather than go past him and then have a sort of a virtually the Prime Minister would say something to him, and he sort of said it quickly back, but he hadn't actually stopped.
Well, maybe Meghan asked him not to talk to him for very long because she doesn't like him very much. But
people close to Meghan, and say that she was. She would, at heart, was a Remainer, so perhaps there was a touch of Brexit about that.
Yeah, maybe. Well, she probably thinks he's a racist as well, but that's another matter. But their trip started well, but kind of fell away a bit, didn't it?
Yes, it did. I mean, she got a lot of positive publicity out of that school visit, and although possibly not as much.
What, the secret school visit that somehow made its way onto her Instagram account?
Well, exactly. Well, I mean, that was always bound to happen,
yeah.
and certainly it's made a bit of a star of the head boy of that Dagenham school,
yes.
Who probably has a career either in the theatre or politics coming up, but in fact, or on the silver screen. Perhaps co-starring with Meghan one day, but in fact, it was an interesting trip. I mean, I'm one of those people who, in a sense, I'm sad because I think Harry and Meghan, could have been a great positive for the royal family, and their departure is damaging. But having said that you can't dictate your own terms and have this half in, half out of the firm.
No, and their decision to depart the royal family is entirely theirs. I mean, the Queen, I think, managed to sort it out quite well and quite quickly. But basically, it's their decision to leave the country. It's their decision to take a step away from their official duties, and the rest of it doesn't really matter, does it?
That's true, and some of the facial expressions of Harry during this trip, not just yesterday, but when you saw him a couple of days ago too, he doesn't look a happy boy, doesn't he? Does he? He looks like somebody who is perhaps torn between the new life he wants to, and his devotion to his wife and child, but also that, in a sense, that there's also that loss of the royal roles, especially with his military connections, which of course he'll be losing apart from the Invictus Games connection. And so, I mean, he looks a troubled man, and you can understand to a certain extent with the life he's actually had, but you also fear this is somebody who is not altogether happy with life.
No, you do get that impression. Paul, thank you very much indeed. Paul Connew there from the New European Columnist